Record. There we go. It's rock and rolling now.
Word.
I was just telling you, I just listened to your podcast. You did, what is it? The Walk Off?
The Walk Show with Walker Neer.
The Walk Show.
We discussed the 12 rules of life. 12. Is it right? 12 rules for life,
rules of life
with Jordan Peterson. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was like, I had it in my earphones while I was working. I had one here and I'm doing my paperwork over here and doing stuff on the computer. So I had it in the whole time, like listening to that stuff and breakdown, because I love Jordan Peterson. When I saw it, I was like, oh man, this dude, they're doing like a breakdown of it. That's pretty rad.
Yeah, it's a little long for sure, but I like, we put a little offer there at the end, so it's worth it to stick through it if you can.
No, yeah, it worked out good for me. Like when you're at work, I always tell, like somebody told me one time, like it's best if you want to support a podcast, or he told me the way he supports the podcast and the way he got monetized, because he plays video games on streaming apps and stuff, and he makes money doing it. On top of being this crazy good businessman, he was giving me all these tips. He's like, you need to put every one of your episodes on YouTube for sure, because we play them in the background so we can hear them. And that way you get a listen. And sometimes I don't even turn the volume up. I just play a friend's podcast in the background with no volume on. And so it gets them a listen and they don't even have to do anything for it, So
I love it. That's awesome. No, that's amazing. It's funny you say that, because I've just started, all my audio podcast episodes go up onto YouTube automatically, but most of them have been done through Zoom, which gives you the video file, and I've just never posted them. And I just now, this past week, my last episode, posted the video file to go along with it.
Isn't it easy to take the Zoom and just transfer it over into YouTube and just let it rock? I mean, do you edit it at all?
Well, I do edit my episodes because I'm not a very good interviewer. Like I blow it all the time. So I'll have these little, moments of, dead space that I'm trying to clean up. So I do go through, and I mean, I don't do a lot of editing, but I do give it a good once over. So I was a little bit nervous about putting the YouTube content out there just completely unfiltered. But at this stage in the game, I just, hey, go with it,
Because video editing is so hard too. Like you can cut it, and I've messed around with it trying to make a movie. Like my brother, I've still got the videos, and I know you're going to dig this because of all your running stuff and all that, but we wanted to make it. It's called From Fat to 50, which is he was like a large guy. Like he'd been overweight for a long time, and then he lost all the weight through just like not eating. And then he's trying to build it back with muscle. And now he's super athletic. Like the guy is one of the best athletes ever that I've ever been around.
Amazing.
And I mean, everything he touches. So he decided that he wanted to start doing CrossFit. And then he went into running, and he got into running a lot because he could do it a lot easier with his job. And he texted me one day and he's like, hey, I'm going to run the 50 miler down in College Station. I'm like, okay, cool. You can come stay with us. That's awesome. And he goes, do you think 3 months is enough time to train for it? And I was like, I have no idea. Let me ask Paul Watkins. He was on the podcast. He'll know. And he's like, that's pretty tight time frame, but okay. And then, so I've got all these videos and trying to edit it. And I'm like, dude, this is so hard.
It takes so much time too. I'm lucky to do any audio editing. The idea of jumping into the video editing on top of that is it's overwhelming. And like people like Brandon, we were talking about before, Brandon Anderson, he's an amazing videographer, and they're great at that. But man, it's just not my wheelhouse right now. I wish it was.
Well, you have a lot of stuff going on. So you have 8 keys to great, and I purposely did not look up a ton of that just so I could hear you explain it in the raw form right now from you. And then you have your podcast you got going on. And then if I see it right, I mean, you've obviously got a family you spend a lot of time with, you do your running, and also have another full-time job. Is that right on everything else going on?
Yeah, well, we've actually, I've reopened Atlantic Custom Group. So before I got into all this, and I've spent the last decade in the commercial space of real estate development and construction and all that. But before I got into the commercial side, I had my own residential general contracting company called Atlantic Custom Group. And now it's not my full-time gig, but we have reestablished that to help support the podcast and to help support 8 Keys to Great, because 8 Keys to Great at its basic premise is how to remodel your life the way that you would remodel your home. So it's all these same principles they're basically construction principles apply to lifestyle design. So it was kind of just this perfect fit of bringing that back in to support the podcast and to support the website. And I was hoping that it wasn't going to be quite as popular as it has been, but the Atlantic Custom Group has actually been more popular than the podcast and everything else I'm doing. So I'm just, hey man, you just got to run with it, you know?
So the 8 Keys to Great how did you start that? And I guess you said it's like the custom, just like foundation of the custom. So what do people do when they go there?
So the website is 8 Keys to Great, and it's the number 8 and the number 2. So that's a little bit confusing to folks. So when you're typing in the website, and hopefully we'll have some links in the show notes, but basically what I did was I began this process of a personal development plan. And that really started about 2 years ago. I had this crazy serendipitous moment and these events that all kind of conspired to force me really to start this program and to come to an understanding of this idea that I had. And the 8 Keys to Great didn't actually even start off as that name. It started off as just personal development concepts. And it was through fleshing out those concepts that the construction themes kept coming back into what I was trying to share. And the idea for the podcast, ironically, stemmed from that personal development plan. The whole idea behind the podcast was to find people that exemplified a lot of the principles within the 8 Keys to Great. And so I just happened to be lucky enough to really know some really neat people, just be associated with them through high school or whatever set of circumstances that just happened to make these people, or that just put me in the path of these folks. And so as I began to realize that these folks were exemplifying those principles, it was like, okay, well, let's show people that this is how it works. Like these are real life, real examples of these principles in action. It's not just my idea. It's not just concepts that I've got, but it's something that is universally true. And so that's really kind of how it started. And the podcast kind of just took off more so than the 8 Keys to Great concept did. And so I just kind of kept that podcast running and just kind of kept going with it. And then COVID hit and everything changed. And, you know, my whole premise for the podcast was to be in-person interviews, you know, face to face. I hated the telephone quality. I could never get into podcasts that didn't have a good audio file. Despite how good the content was. Now, I know a lot of people say, hey, just put the content out there. And I'm a big believer of get good quality content out there and people will listen. But for me, I had to have that audio quality. And so that's how I started off. And then when COVID hit and that changed the whole dynamic, I had actually been just lucky enough to be preparing for that. And Squadcast was this service that came about that provided a direct recording from your audio feed directly from your computer so that you didn't pick up a lot of that interference that you would pick up from a traditional Zoom call or from over the phone or whatever. So it actually sounded like you were person to person, you were face to face. And so it actually opened up this whole window of opportunity for me to find all these international guests that I never would have considered before or even thought about because I was all in person, and it just completely changed the dynamic of the podcast. So I was very blessed in that regard.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because I've done several where I've had the phone to the mic and all that, like with, you know, because you got to do people's phone call and sometimes they got to do it this way and that way. And I remember I sent shout out to Rick Thorne. That guy's awesome. Like he's one of my favorite people. I love talking to him, but but you had
to do it over the phone though. You could tell.
Yeah. He didn't know, he didn't know how to open it. He's like, I don't know if I have a Zoom. And so we ended up doing that podcast over the phone because it was like all last second type of thing. But so I've got like a set, you know, I'll work around, but I'm just like you. I like when I listen to one, I guess I got spoiled during non-COVID times where people could go in person. So if they did one over the phone, I was like, no way, I'm not going to listen to it. But now with Zoom, I guess, and you know, there's no other choice. Like people can't, there's not a lot of people being able to fly to people's area to be like face to face. Some people are scared of it and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, COVID definitely completely changed the dynamic for all of us in so many different ways. I still strive for the in person, and I still make every effort to get people in person that I can. But I also realize that there's some opportunity to get some more internet. Like I just went on this international spree. I've had like a half a dozen guests from Australia for whatever reason, and Spain, and I just got wrapped up with one in Scotland, Japan. So it really opened up my eyes to what was possible and what's out there. And big shout out to Squadcast. They're just like Zoom, where they provide this kind of an audio and video feed, but the quality that you're able to get from those recordings really opened up the door for me to feel comfortable going into this dynamic of international guests and recording remotely and that sort of thing.
Now you're gonna have me playing around with it. Now I'm gonna be like, I gotta check out this squad.
Yeah, for sure. And shout out to Zach Moreno and those guys. They do a phenomenal job, and they're actually working very diligently right now to have the video feed available to you as well, just like Zoom. So that's in the works and that's coming. And the biggest difference with Squadcast is they record directly from your computer. So eliminating all those glitches, all those nuances of an internet feed that provide problems for you, all that's eliminated. You'll still catch it through the conversation, but the actual recordings are crystal clear and don't have any of that in there. So it makes editing much easier for us that aren't very good at it.
That's what I need for sure. But the podcast being a selling point for your 8 Keys to Great sounds like an awesome idea. Like you're bringing the people on that use your philosophies and you're selling the philosophies over here on the website, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, all the podcast really does is just exemplify all of those different principles. And to be honest, we don't really spend a lot of time talking about the 8 Keys to Great within the podcast itself. I've tried to let it stand on its own as its own thing, because it's kind of taken this life of its own through the course of development. But all the principles still certainly hold true. And what I've done is I've created seasons, 13 episode seasons. And so at the end of each season, I present one of the 8 keys, one of those principles, so that we go into a great depth over all that. So it's not an interview with another person. It's actually kind of like a summary of that season, and then going into great depth into the details and the nitty gritty behind whatever principle, whatever that key is, that's the next one in line. So the next one I think is number 5. I think that's got coming up in 2 episodes.
Is this something that you thought of to do personal development wise, that you learned from owning your own business and starting your own business, like, and building it up, and just like the idea hit you in your head? Or is it, is that the way it kind of like you got the idea to move and transfer from construction into this 8 Keys to Great thing?
I wish it was that organized and that well thought out, but quite honestly, it was a comedy of errors that got me to this point. The podcast didn't start off as being called the Extraordinary Podcast. The podcast was originally called Pi, Profiles in Excellence. And so like that had its own thing. The 8 Keys to Great didn't start off as that. It was started off as just personal development and like kind of a best practices and habits kind of thing, that so many people tried to present. And it was through this process of trying to organize the content and make it into a presentable fashion that, for whatever reason, I've always been this construction guy. I've always enjoyed building things and creating stuff with my hands. And it started off with like skateboard ramps. And in the early days, it was like stealing my dad's tools and going to the local construction site and pilfering wood and just constructing little things. And so that construction process has always been like embedded in the back of my brain. Like it's just this part of who I am. And so as I was working through the personal development concepts, for whatever reason, I'll tell you what the reason was. It was my brother-in-law. And he happened to, we were talking through this, and actually I had him on the podcast and we were going through some of the stuff, and he's like, dude, you got to tie this into construction. So like, that's who you are. And so like, if you can tie it into who you are, then it will relate more to people. And so that was kind of like this aha moment, construction. It all just, and then once that light bulb went off, all the pieces just kind of tumbled into place where everything just kind of made sense at that point.
Yeah, it's so wild how little things, like you said a bunch of things right there that it's so fascinating. Like being handy when you're young, like, you know, I guess you, how old are you, right? How old are you?
Do I have to say? I'm in my 40s. Probably a little
Okay.
bit older than
So
you, but
like
not much.
so we grew up around the same time frame where like if we wanted a skate ramp, we had to go build it. Like there wasn't these skate parks that they have now
Yeah.
everywhere. Like we really
Oh
had to
yeah.
go make our own things. And so you get very resourceful when you're left to, you're left to your stuff. Like you make stuff, you learn about the angles and the pitches and everything like that you need to launch at different styles, and you know, making things out of pallets, and you get very creative. So
Yeah.
your mind starts to work on a different level, like where you're like, oh, I want, you know what, I could probably do that, but I just tweak it. Let me try this and let me try that. And you're going to need to put a brace here. And you just automatically start to instinctively know that sort of stuff as a kid. And you having a talent for it, like building the construction, I totally believe like whenever you're passionate about something, you do something good. And when you start to turn that, like you speak about that stuff, it's going to be infectious no matter what. Like I could never build, like I'm not a builder. I don't do home construction. I'm handy. Like I've added on a room to our house, right? But I'm not a builder. And, but it can be infectious for me to listen to somebody who's passionate about building, talk about it, and then relate your stories to life. Like I love that idea. That it was exactly correct. You got to be who you are when you do this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and from what I've been told, I'm very enthusiastic about my concepts. And so I do, people tend to get pretty fired up about it, but like how well I present and how well I see all that through, that's a whole nother story. So it's definitely something I'm working on. The enthusiasm's there, but need to make sure that the follow through and all the content really backs that up.
Yeah. Yeah. The content has to be there. Like your ideas have to be proven and good, and people still got to follow it. I mean, that's one thing. Well, I guess they do. Man, there's a lot of people that it's just all a bunch of fake crap out there. Like it's all
Oh yeah,
just
for sure. Well,
it just
dude, we're
makes
all
sense.
winging it. Anybody that will tell you otherwise doesn't really know what they're talking about.
You know, one thing that I really like about it, speaking of winging it, is you said the podcast, the website changed names a bunch of times. It seems like you're a dude that just pulls the trigger. Like I get an idea and I'm just gonna do it, and I take action on it and then work it out.
Yeah, I mean this past 2 years, I got to tell you, I mean it's been a wild ride. I never would have. I mean, this is not who I am. I'm coming from that construction world. I'm much more comfortable swinging a hammer than any of this kind of stuff that we're doing. Um, but the calling and the need to get this stuff out there and like just to go for it, just to put yourself out there. And one thing I've never had a problem with is making a fool out of myself and embarrassing myself and failing. So I never looked at that as a positive before, but the more that I begin to understand some of these personal development concepts and how all this process works, it's like you got to fail your way forward. So now it makes me feel kind of okay that I'm such a bumbling idiot all the time, because it's like that's part of the process, right? So so like that has been, whether it be my social media or the podcast or any of this stuff, it's like just going for it and just putting it out there. And I think the more we can do that, yeah, we will get kicked in the nuts from time to time and things won't go according to plan, but we'll keep getting better. And, the next time I do it, it'll be a little bit better than this time. And so eventually it'll come out right. Right.
Dude, I love that, failing forward. How cool. Like that's, you just got to keep failing forward. Just keep
Yeah.
failing forward. You say it with like a big old smile on your face, man. That's so awesome. I love that. I love that idea. Like, hey, today I'm just going to fail forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just to do a little bit, just try that little bit and see what happens. And I'm all about those little baby steps and just, sticking it out there and something, a lot of times it won't work out, but the few times it does, you pick up those little pieces that work and you just kind of keep moving forward and it'll all come together.
Yeah. And then
like your podcast, man, like your podcast is amazing. Like it's very clear that that's been an evolution, and the guests that you're getting and what you're going through. I mean, it's so much fun to watch that. And that inspires people. That's the coolest thing about our podcast and what we do. It's like, a lot of times you don't feel the accolades and you don't get a lot of the feedback. It's kind of like you're in your own little world out there, but man, you are making a difference, dude. And you don't know it at the time, but if you just stick with it and you just keep plugging forward, it's like, dude, you're impacting people. And that's a really amazing thing.
And I'm like the worst at taking compliments, but when you're on, I mean, I guess, you said it really good where you're really trying to be good at something. And so you're constantly nitpicking and working on your craft and trying to figure out where I could do this better and that better. And where can I say this at the right time, or how can I direct the conversation, or, dead air and the whole process, man. And then you've been like, we were talking about mixing stuff, and I'm constantly, that stuff I'm not good at. Like, I'm terrible. See, like you swinging the hammer, I'm good at talking. Like I never thought that would be a thing. Cause when I was young, I didn't hardly talk to anybody. Everybody thought I was a jerk, until you hung out with me and he skated with me in the group. And then you're like, oh, he's a silly goofball, But now when I got older, I got a sales job. I talk all the time. I love it. I've figured out that I love just meeting people, talking to them, finding out what they're doing, what they're about. Like, I'm interested in all of their stuff. And so, like, this is what I'm good at. Techie stuff is not what I'm good at. I'll swing a hammer and I'll talk. Those two things I can do. This is super hard. So it's like, it's a big struggle for me to learn all of it. I don't have a producer, none of that. It's all done by me, like you. It's all done by you. And so you have to be good. You have to at least wade your way through the stuff that's tough to get to a point where you can get a producer and you can get all this stuff. But to say it's impacting people is kind of wild, man. Like, to think of it that way, coming from somebody outside of what I'm doing, like your podcast is impacting people just like mine is impacting people. I mean, if you're going to say that, there might as well be a mirror up there in front of you, it's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it is a trip. And that's where it kind of hit me, was when I had people begin to reach out to me and to tell me, like when you get those DMs and you get those direct communications from folks that are really impacted by what you're doing. And there's not a lot of them. And there's so many. One of the things that's so interesting about social media is for every one comment or one like, there's 50 people that have actually seen what you're looking at, or 100 people that have actually seen what you're looking at. And most of them aren't going to say anything. Most of them are just going to keep to themselves and keep on scrolling or whatever. But even with those guys, like, if you're consistent and if you've got that message and if you're on point, man, it matters. All those little things, they matter over time. And it wasn't until I got some of that. Well, what was interesting to me was I got DMs from guests, and those guests had been contacted by people who were on the show and had an impact. And there was like this connection or whatever. Man, it's like when they got that, dude, that just solidified everything for me. It's like, it doesn't matter how bummed out I am or what I'm struggling with or what I'm going through. There's people that need this. There's people that are looking for this, and there's people that are counting on this. And that's what I never realized is, like, you don't really see that in the numbers, that people that are expecting that next podcast for you, people that are hoping for that next episode. And it doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, and when you do notice that, it makes you realize what you're doing is really important. Like the podcast that you're putting out there is important. And it gets very easy for us. Like you said, we're one man rodeo. We got to do so much of this on our own. That's so There's no money in it, like we're not getting rich, there's all these struggles that present themselves. And then you get the haters on top of that, there's a lot of discouragement along the way. And so like anytime I get the opportunity to talk to you or any like Walker, like you were talking about before, that are putting this stuff out there, I want to be so encouraging because I see a lot of people stop, but I had one friend, Amanda, who's kind of backed off of her podcast. I'm like, please don't do that. You have no idea that there's somebody that's dying because you're not putting that content out there anymore. And we don't realize it, but man, we do make a difference. You make a difference in everything that you're doing. People are paying attention, whether you know it or not.
If you do it for that reason, if you do it for the reasons all the reasons that you said, I think you'll keep going.
Yeah.
Because like you said, it takes, before you make any money at doing anything like this, like it's like, well, you're in real estate. Imagine like real estate agents. I looked into being one time. How long it takes for them to make money? They don't just jump into it and start making money. Most of them live in their parents' basement for 5 years until they start actually making a good living. They go through that sucky part of working, but they love what they do. It's just anything else like this, you have to do it so much, and you've got to go through that part where you may not make money at the end of the journey. Like, so it better be a rewarding thing that you're going to sit there and cut the time out of your schedule, away from your family, supportive spouse, you name it, pump the money into it that you can, figure out ideas. I think anything in life that you're going to go do, whatever job it is, whatever business, you've got to have, like, if that's your mentality, you're going to do it for the right reasons, and you're going to continue to pursue it, and you're going to be happy.
Yeah. I think that's podcasting has become such a popular thing to do now. Like everybody's got to have their podcast to supplement whatever it is that they're doing. And I think that's great. I mean, I'm all about, the more podcasts, the better. I think the more that we're putting content out there, I'm all for that. But so many people jump into the podcasting world not really fully understanding and what that level of commitment is. And I always tell people, like, everybody's got those first 10 episodes figured out really well. But if you're really in it for the long haul, what does episode number 100 look like? If you've really thought that far out, if you're really thinking about that long term, and if you're in it to do it, if you're in it just to make money, you will not last. There's no way you'll survive in this game if it's just about the money. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to have a love for it, or else you'll quit. You won't make it.
Yeah, and what you said, being like, impacting people's lives. If the rewarding part of it is, like, I'm putting myself in your shoes and getting a message from that person. You impacted those people, and I've got messages before, but that reward of, they don't know you, they have nothing to do, like, they don't really even care that much about you right now, right? You're just a vessel to get the guest message out, and to have somebody be affected by that right there, and you just facilitated it, that's the reward in and of itself.
Yeah. It's been so cool to me. Like, I had one guest he's a winemaker, and he works at a winery, and that's what he does. And then I had another guest that has a charity, and those two guests, because of the show, linked up together, and they did this little charity thing, and the wine guy sold a shit ton of wine, and the charity got a big fat check at the end of it. So it was like a win, and it spread the word all along the way. And it was all because they just happened to be guests on the show. So it was like, I didn't have anything to do with any of that, but like the cosmos aligned and everything kind of just came together for it to all work. And it's like, dude, that's really what it's all about. Like, how many times can we recreate that? How many times can we use this platform and what we're doing to put those people in place, to give those people an opportunity to connect, to further themselves along their journey. I mean, because that's really what it's all about. Like, even when I ran my own business as a general contractor, I always wanted to know what my guys' long-term vision was. Where do you want to be in 10 years? I hope you don't want to still be working for me in 10 years, because that's not a very good plan. Where do you want to go? What is it that you want to do? What kind of life do you want to have 10 years from now? And let's start now today, planting the seeds to get you there. And I think that that's so important, regardless of whatever field that you're in, whether it be podcasting or construction or whatever. It's like, how are you going to make those guys better? How are you going to evolve to that next level? How are you going to continue to improve to get to where it is you ultimately want to be?
Dude, that's such an interesting, that's not always the normal business owner mentality. I know my family brought me up in that sort of way. Like my grandpa and my dad, that's some of the messages I heard when I was a kid, when we grew up in a family business, of what they said to their employees. People would come to my dad for a raise, like really good employees, or my grandpa, and they would say, "Hey, I got this job offer. I really want to stay here, but I got this job offer making all this money." And he'd go, "Take it. I mean, I can't, you've reached your limit here. It's time for you to go do something else." They were like, "Just tell me to quit." And it's like, "No, I want to keep you, but why am I going to stop you from bettering
But I
your
want to
life
hold you
as a
back.
human being?" Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's refreshing to hear that. I think the world definitely needs way more of that right now. Like way more of that attitude of like, I don't want to say paying it forward, but wanting to see others succeed almost more than yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the name of the game. Honestly, it is. I mean, if you're holding somebody back because it's benefiting you, I mean, you're doing that person a disservice. It's not right.
That's I dig that. I dig that part of, your attitude and what you're doing. It's like you're a special human, man.
No,
In all the best ways, you're a special human.
I can't
For
tell you how much
wanting,
I
like,
appreciate
to
that.
ask that question. No, hey, I mean, you said it. Like, it just comes out like you went on a rant and then it just popped out. That's one thing I love about having these conversations, that if you can get down into the real person where you're just like sitting there having a conversation with somebody, like, man, you see so many cool things. Like, that's a perspective now that's going to stick in my mind whenever I'm doing something. It's like, hey, I hope you don't want to work here for 10 years. I've said that a lot of times, but like now it's just going to stick in my head more, because hearing it from somebody who ran a general contractor business and all that, you're like, hey, I don't want you here in 10 years. Find something else to do that's better than this. Your life needs to be better than this.
Well, the whole concept behind the website and really honestly the podcast too, it's all about lifestyle design. And I think that, it doesn't have to be about money. Money is important and that all those things matter. But like whether you're a garbage man picking up trash off the street, or you're working at McDonald's, or you've got a CEO job, you're living that life of what you thought was supposed to be that ideal lifestyle or whatever. But what I always encourage people to do is take some time to figure out what it is that you actually want. What are I mean, that's the first step in the 8 keys to great, is identifying the things that you actually want. What is it that is important to you? And then once you can identify those things, then you can begin to craft this lifestyle that supports that. And that lifestyle doesn't have to be being a multimillionaire. It doesn't have to be fame and fortune and all these different things. If you like to go fishing and you're a big bass guy and that's your thing, then there's a way to craft a lifestyle that supports that allows you to spend 2 or 3 days on the lake every week, doing your thing, or whether, if you like to, whatever it is, whatever it is that checks those boxes for you, there's a way to craft a lifestyle to support that. And that's what really the 8 keys to great is all about, is identifying what is it you want. And then let's go through these steps that makes every single day a perfect vision of what that looks like. We all think we're going to work all this, we're going to do this until we retire at 65. And then at 65, now we're going to get to go live that life. Well, what's stopping you from living that life now? You can be slinging fries at McDonald's and craft a lifestyle that you love within a matter of 90 days. But you got to identify what it is that you want to support that. And going through that process is it's a mind opening, a mind expanding process And we think we know what we want. We think we know what's important to us. But when you actually go through the process and write it down and put it on paper and go through go through the motions, then you begin to realize what you thought was important, maybe not be quite as important as what you thought. And so you can start to now identify what is it that is important, and then put the things in place to allow you to live that kind of life every single day.
The deciphering, that's one tough thing. Whenever I hear, like, I heard you say that, and I'm like, I wonder what your idea is on how you find what you want, because I've been there and I've done it. I know what worked for me, in it's still like a process, right? But I'm figuring it out. I'm building this positive momentum, and it's going in this direction because I figured out what worked, and I had to stick with like this mental thing. So what I did was, I was having the hardest time, and it's in a, like a dark spot. I'm like, I don't like what I'm doing. I don't like everything around me, because everything is just like, it's just stress everywhere. And I want to do something I enjoy for a living. I want to do this. I want to do that. So what I started doing, I was like, finally, I told myself, I'm going to start looking for opportunities. I may not know what I want to do right now. I don't know what I want to do. I'm not a professional baseball player. I'm not a professional rollerblader. Those two things are out the window. If I can't do that, then I don't know what I want to do. So how do I figure that out? Just keep my eyes open for opportunity. I'm just going to practice that. That's what I told myself. And slowly I noticed like my mood started to change, and then work started getting better where I'm at. And then all these opportunities started to come out, and I'm going, oh, now I'm getting how to find this. Now I'm getting the message from myself. Like, this is how I do that right there. And so hearing you talk about it brought all those memories back in, like that fundamental that I created for myself, but like that way. But it was a struggle, man. You can tell people all the time, find what you're passionate about. Like, I've been working this office job that I don't know. I've just done this for 15 years. This is habit.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, there's a great resource that's out there. There's a book out there by Cal Newport, and it's called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And it's actually a quote by Steve Martin originally. And, there's this whole concept of follow your passion, follow what makes you tick or whatever. And I think there's some significance there, but there's also an aspect of get good at something. Like, we can't all be yoga instructors. We can't all be rock climbers or, like kayakers or whatever. Like, my buddy runs a kayaking outfit out of Stanley, Utah, and it's amazing whitewater rafting. It's just amazing, awesome thing. But we can't all do that. There's not enough of those jobs out there for all of us. So what I liked about that was, when I read that book, it was okay. Well, for me, it was that construction element. There was this thing where I'm good with my hands. I like to build stuff. So that just all kind of fits for who I am, for my personality. Well, that book just breaks down. It's like, figure out what you're good at, and then go get really, really, really good at that one thing. And as you continue to improve at that one thing, then what you're passionate about, those opportunities will show up as a result of you being good at that one thing. And he used the example of, I think it was like being a really good doctor or something. And like this doctor wanted to, make an impact on the world and make a big difference or whatever, but he was just a doctor. Well, being the best cataract eye surgeon that was out there, he ultimately got these opportunities to then go do cataract surgeries over in China. And literally, like, in one day, they do like 1,000 operations or something ridiculous, where they would like remove the cataracts off of all these people and like make this huge dramatic impact. But he never would have been able to do that if he hadn't gotten really, really good at cataract surgery. And so it's like, figure out what it is that you're good at, hone that craft, and then the purpose will present itself. Those opportunities will then arise because you're good at what you do, because you're master of your domain. When you're really good at what you're doing, people will find you. They'll start coming to you to provide that service to others.
Dude, I think you need to be like a public speaker.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
I think we found like a good calling right there, man. Somebody needs to hit you up, like to go speak to schools or something. That's like, it's a fantastic process, a way to go, man. Do
Oh,
you
I'm
ever,
grateful.
has
Thank you.
anybody reached out? Has anybody reached out to you like for this 8 keys to great? Just hearing, we're on the first key and I'm inspired already, man. This is awesome. So like, has anybody, have any schools or anything like that reached out to you or any people for public speaking in this 8 keys to great thing? Or is that something that you're willing to pursue down the line?
Oh, sir. I mean, it is certainly the long-term goal. No, I mean, I've had a few opportunities to present on. I've got a concept of the 3 habits in 30 minutes. It's like a morning routine kind of thing, and I've presented on that a few times. And I've been very blessed to be on other podcasts as well. And I've got to share some of the 8 keys to great concepts out there, but it's still so young and the website's still constantly evolving and growing. I'm certainly looking for more opportunities to share that, but not yet, knock on wood. 2021, right?
You need to get, it needs to get in the right person's ear, man, at the right time.
Yeah.
Because I think like if it just hits right, I think this would be beneficial for people to hear, especially like, I don't know why I immediately thought like if you get them more like at a younger age where you can tell them that there's things that are possible other than what they think is the norm, like they can start exploring what really like help, like being good at something, getting good at something, and then other things will happen on top of that. It's so true. That's the way almost everything happens, right? So when you said that, it brought all the way back to that thing. Like, I love this podcast. It brought me a self-reflection type of thing, I guess, if you want to go that kind of, wooey wooey or whatever. But I'm like, I love this podcast. And I've said out loud before, I would love to do something that makes me a living, something like this. If something branches off of it, I'm keeping my eyes open for that opportunity. That ties right into what you just said. And I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Nate says I am. Okay,
Yes.
cool.
Yes, you are, for sure. For sure. And like, again, it may not be financially lucrative at this point, but when you have that passion, when you have that commitment, it'll all come full circle.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, I really hope you start getting into some public speaking stuff, because I think like, man, with everything that's going on and the wackiness of news and what people are ingesting in there, that's one thing, that Rick Thorne episode, one thing that impacted me a lot, I think about it all the time, is that he went to sleep with headphones on with these positive things, like positive books and positive things in his ears while he's sleeping. And you think it sounds weird. That dude's the most positive dude you can listen to. And so I'm like, man, I just need to ingest all of the things that say you can figure it out, be tough, make it through it. Like, there's things on the other side. You're going to go through some suck, but it's going to be great. Like, I need all that to come in versus like, it's terrible. They're going to ruin the country. They're going to ruin this. Things are going to close down forever. And I need to push that away and just be like in this zone. And I've done that like over my little 2-week break. No news, nothing about what's going on. I didn't know what COVID was going on. I didn't know what election stuff was going on. I
And
was
you
the
weren't a
happiest
bit
I've
worse
ever
off
been.
for not knowing, were you?
The life is the same outside my door, man.
Exactly.
Life's the same.
Well,
Life's
first,
the exact same.
before we get off on a tangent, let me just say I was completely jealous of you getting Rick Thorne on your show. Rick Thorne is a personal hero of mine. I've known that. I had the opportunity. We talked a little bit about this online, but I got the opportunity to meet him like in the early 90s. They came through and did a tour. They were hitting all the Six Flags parks. And, obviously he's a biker BMX guy. But we took him out to downtown Atlanta and did this rad session and had just this, back in those days, there was a lot of hate coming out towards the rollerbladers and in our community with the skateboarding and whatnot. And Rick was just such a cool dude. And it was the first real session I had with a BMX guy, with somebody who wasn't a skater or whatever. And it was just such a cool vibe. And to get to see him on your podcast and to see how that come full circle, I'm like, man, that son of a gun got Rick on the podcast. I've been reaching out to him for months and he hadn't even returned my call. And you got him locked in. So that was an amazing thing. And he is a solid dude. And kudos to him and to you both for that amazing interview.
No, thanks, man. Thanks. He took over. You don't have to interview that guy. Just say, hey,
Yeah,
Rick,
he
talk
kind of
about
goes on
something.
cruise
And
control. He
then,
just hit record and just let him cut loose.
yeah, just hit record and let him talk. And you just sit there, man. Cause I mean, I don't want to mess him up. He's like, he's on a flow. Like, go for it, dude.
Yeah,
Just
he gets in his
really
groove
just
for
keep
sure. He gets
talking.
into his rut.
Yeah. Well, I got a question for you too, because one of your episodes in your podcast was like you did, and I don't know how deep you want to go into it, and we don't have to get political about it as far as that goes, but you did a very good podcast and will explain on mask and COVID and the situation back then, and you having it, your family situation is a sensitive issue to all that's going on, right? So I think that's where I got most impacted by it. It wasn't even a political thing. It's like, here's a guy who's open up and talking about something sensitive on every angle. So it's like you're being super vulnerable in that episode. You went, here's my family, here's the situation. We're more susceptible to illness, and but this is the way we believe in what we think. And I'm not telling you that this is how you have to think. I'm saying this is from my perspective how we deal with it and what goes on. I think that was like, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was a great episode, right?
I really
Because
appreciate
I'll
that.
never know what it's like. Yeah, I never know what it's
No,
like to have
that means a lot, because that was a very, and I mean, COVID is a hot topic, and I try not to get too political with anything as much as possible, because anytime you do that, you tend to alienate some aspect of your audience. But with the COVID stuff, it was really important to me to get something out there, and I can't tell you how much that I appreciate those comments, because it was very important to me to present my thoughts in the most, I guess, humble manner, or just in a way that was not confrontational or trying to be, again, political or anything like that, but I did feel like that there was an important message that needed to be shared. And that's only compounded since I put that episode out there.
I was about to ask, like, I guess that's where I was getting to with it, is that, did it affect your audience? Did your audience have negative feedback to it? Like, because it is such a sensitive issue where no matter what you think, it's kind of weird. You can't have an opinion or talk about it. Like I would rather be friends with I'm friends with people who believe mask all the time, go inside. My brother's that way. And then there's people like me, that's a little bit of a gunslinger. Like, dude, I don't know, like, that's just the way I am. It's the way I'm built. But I actually don't hate on anybody for their viewpoint, because nobody knows anything. So I was wondering if you got any backlash from sharing that. And also, on top of that, this is two questions in one pretty much. But does the way you're handling it with the sensitivity of, like, and people are going to have to listen to the episode to understand that, the sensitivity of the illnesses in your household with your kids and stuff, did that raise their confidence, the way you are handling the situation all the way around?
It's hard to say. I will say I was very pleased at how I presented my arguments or my perspective within the podcast. I think that I spent some time and some effort drafting that out and trying to put my thoughts into a cohesive manner. Now, since then, I'm a social media guy, and I post on social media probably more than I should. And I tend to be passive aggressive and all that kind of stuff. So I have gotten some blowback, certainly on social media, for some of those posts and for what I tend to put out there. But that being said, I think because I took the time and the effort to present the podcast in a very level-headed and thoughtful manner, I actually didn't. I was expecting to receive some blowback from that episode, and I was prepared for it, and I, kind of knew what could possibly happen from all that. But surprisingly, there was very little, if almost none, negativity or negative pushback from the episode. But certainly, like I said, some of my posts and some of my stuff since then I haven't gone into it as sensitive as I probably should have. And not probably put the thought into, some of, and for what it's worth, Gwinnett County, where I live, they just put out a thing today where they've suspended in-person learning starting next week. They've decided to go back to a digital learning format.
Man.
And it just was so incredibly disappointing and so incredibly frustrating when I see the reality of what's going on in my community and the reality of my situation. And I've been such a big fan of living in the state of Georgia and our governor and how he's handled the situation and all that. And now to see us kind of backpedal and to continue to buy into some of the narratives that don't necessarily ring true to me. It's tough. It's really, really hard. And I want to be mad. I want to be frustrated, and I want to push back, a little bit, probably more than I should. But I try to constantly keep in mind all the different perspectives that are out there, all the different people that are being impacted. And that's why I was so adamant about expressing the specific needs of my family and the specific challenges that we have. Because, so many times when you see somebody push back or you see somebody who disagrees with your opinion, well, you just make all these assumptions. And I wanted to make sure that some of those assumptions weren't made as I tried to present that argument. But I don't know how effective I've been with that, because like I said, we continue to kind of backslide a little bit. And for what it's worth, like the state of California, and I've got friends in New York, and what's going on in those places absolutely terrifies me.
Oh yeah. I think that's the scariest part, is that part, like that situation there, and not being in control of it, obviously. But you bring up, the reason I asked the kid thing is because when this whole thing started, the most important thing to us, was when we thought about it, was this is our chance to show our kids how we react in a time like this. And so like you say, you want to be mad. I want to be mad, I've got ideas. Sure. I've got thoughts running through my head where common sense has to come into play at some point, right? Use your common sense. Like, none of it makes sense what you're doing. And why are you forcing it on people? I want to say a bunch of things along with what I just said right there. But I also then take a step back out of that anger and go, okay, I mean, I have no control over it. Other people are looking at it a different way than I do. So this is my chance to show the kids how you handle adversity, like what it's like to go through a tough time and how you get through the other side. You don't let this little speed bump derail where your family's going.
Absolutely. Well, and we've been really fortunate where we are, and in our situation personally, where my kids have actually been very minorly affected by this whole set of circumstances. And I've personally tried to do everything I can to not let them be impacted by this event, to let them carry on as much as normal and to go through the normal routines and the normal habits and normal behaviors, and living a normal life. And we've been incredibly blessed that we've been able to do that where we are. And my kids they barely even understand the impact of some of this and what all the other things that are going on, and their lives have been minimally impacted. And that's been such a key thing for me, is like, let's make this as minimally impactful as possible for them. And we've been lucky enough that that's been the case.
That's really awesome, man. And to go on your social media, first off, I don't know why anybody gets mad at you. You're just picking up littering. Like, that's all you're doing, is picking up where people are throwing trash on the ground.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get too much blowback for that one. There's been some other posts that I put out there that are maybe a little bit more jaded and pointed. And for what it's worth, I've gone through some personal struggles this last month or two, so I've gotten a little passive aggressive on social media. But in hindsight, as we've walked into the new year, and as I've tried to understand and make sense of this crazy chaos that we're living in, the one thing that I've reflected on often is the people that I count on, particularly on social media, the people that I look to as that kind of rock. When all of this is going on and all the craziness and everything, they just kept on plugging away. They never stopped their message. They never stopped what they were doing. They never stopped their process, what their goals were. Rodney, I'm forgetting his last name, Rodney something or another. He's a guy that's out of Huntsville, Alabama. and he's got this thing that where he mows grass for people, and he challenges kids to mow 50 yards. I can't believe I'm forgetting his last name. Rodney. It's going to kill me. I can't believe I'm blowing it here. But he's hooked up with Lay's potato chips. He's got a sponsorship now. He's got doing some great things. And any kid that mows 50 yards, he actually drives to their house and delivers a brand new lawnmower, leaf blower, and like a weed eater. And these brand new, like he drives to their home and gives it to them. And it's just this amazing thing. And when through all of this, particularly when we were going through a lot of the Black Lives Matter and the protests and you know, everything's just kind of gotten just so upside down. That guy, dude, you didn't see one post about any of that. All he did was keep promoting his message, keep doing this thing, keep plugging on. And I realized, like, man, I counted on that. Like when everybody else, like Jim Gaffigan is a comedian that I love, and I'm so into his stuff, and he's a hilarious guy. And he went and got political. He went and got all anti-Trump or whatever. And I don't care if you like Trump or you don't like Trump, whatever your politics are. I could honestly care less. But when you throw that into who you are into your entertainment value, it just turns me off automatically. And so like Gaffigan, he turned me off, but this Rodney doing his thing and keep plugging away and keep sending out his message, that positive thing, it made me realize, okay, well, that's who I need to be. I need to be putting out that, I need to be consistent. Why am I getting caught up? Why do I want to alienate part of my audience with pissing them off about how I feel about masks? Why am I not putting out a positive message that's uplifting a Democrat, uplifting a Republican, uplifting a libertarian, whoever it is? Let me uplift that individual. And if I'm doing that, then forget it. Then the politics will eventually go away. People will be able to put that aside and focus on what's truly important.
Man, that is so well said right there. That's exactly what everybody should be striving for. Like, and you're exactly right. And what I see when I see Gaffigan do that, I guess I've always tried to look at myself in other person's shoes and understand like they're not like me. So try to get inside their brain, right? Like the best I can is all I can do is try to see it. What I see is that it's just a reaction from the stress of being locked up, man. You know, I guess he's on the East Coast, or he's on the, you know, he's
New York City with 5 kids. Dude, in the city, completely locked down. There's no wonder he's losing it. Right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not it. And he's going to lean a direction one way or the other, not hating on that at all. Right. But some of the way he's talking, it comes off like, dude, this dude is just stressed out over the situation. Like he's exploding, you know, where the other people like this Rodney guy are like, dude, I've seen some freaking times in my life, and the only way to get through it is to just keep plugging, you know? And those people right there are the ones you lean on. Man's Search for Meaning is my favorite book for that exact reason. I don't know if you've ever read it. Very cool. I would suggest
big fan, huge fan.
Dude, I sat there, I read it, and then I would read a chapter over. I would read the chapter twice before I got done with the book. Like, I'm like, I need to read that again. I need this story.
Utter brilliance.
Yeah. To go through the things that he went through and to have that attitude to be like, how can I affect my life in here? I'm like, whoa, nobody thinks that. Who thinks that? Like, who came up with?
Can you imagine?
That's incredible. And it made me feel like, dude, you've got so much more left to go to learn how to get to that spot.
Yeah.
You need to keep working, man, because
that book is probably the most humbling experience you could go through.
Yeah. But like guys like him, dude, that's where you need to be. And guys like Rodney, I mean, it was well said, dude.
Rodney Smith Jr. That's his name. Rodney Smith Jr. Check him out on Instagram.
All right. I'm going to go find him, and then I'll put him out on Instagram too and say, like, this is what we talked about on the podcast.
Awesome. So, yeah. To be honest with you, I'd love to get him on the podcast. He's actually a goal of mine to get him on there. Amazing.
There you go. Have you asked him yet?
I've reached out to him on social media, but you know, I mean, he kind of got big time. He's exploding right now. So it's probably a tough road to hoe, but we'll get there.
Yeah. He probably hasn't even seen your message then.
Probably. Yeah. But hey, I got to give kudos to
I
you. I
know.
was going through your stuff, and I would love to know about your triathlon experience. Being coming from the Ironman world and all that. I mean, we've got that skating connection or whatnot, but I'd love to hear about your how you got into the world of triathlon and dipped your toe into that little arena.
Oh, I love doing new things. Like I love it's something that I see something I go, "Ooh, that looks like fun. I want to try that." Like so I see dudes that are doing triathlons and I'm like, "Man, they're really in shape. It looks really hard. I want to know if I can do that." So that's all that was. Like I want to know if I've never been a runner. I've never been a swimmer, like a competitive swimmer. I can swim, I've surfed, all that good stuff in the ocean. But that's different. Whoever even says that they're like, "Oh, I can swim in the ocean." Yeah. Sure. So I can get to that in a second. But like that's basically how it started. And we were on vacation in Florida and I saw a triathlon dude go out there and go swim a mile and he took off and I go, "Man, I'd like to try one of those." And you can't say that out loud with my wife because she's like, "You got to go do it now." So I said
I
it.
like her
She goes,
already.
"Really?" And I go, "Yeah." And so she signed me up. So I had one. So then I had to train for it. And I had to go swim. And I quickly learned the most humbling thing in my arsenal was trying to competitive swim. I'm like not an out of shape guy, right?
Swimming is
I'm
so
pretty fit.
hard.
Man, my stepdaughter, who she competitive swims, they swim what 1,200 meters in warm up, no problem. She's out there giggling and bouncing around. I swim 250 and I'm sucking air, and I'm like, I'm not that bad. Why am I breathing so hard? Like, what is this business going on? I don't even know. But I love it. I loved it. I loved every second of it. It was a fantastic experience. The people around the triathlon world were so inviting and friendly. Um, Riding a
Good
bike, I
community.
rode bikes as a kid. I can ride a bike. Riding a bike was no problem. The run, I didn't know how I was going to feel when I got off the bike. I actually ran faster. That sounds
Isn't that
weird,
funny?
but I ran faster the whole. Funny. It's a funny thing about me. I'm super competitive when I do stuff. So I seem silly, but I'm very competitive. And I slowest swim it was a slow swim. It was faster than I ever did in any of my other stuff, but it was still way super slow. Not a good swim time. Get on my bike. I just run out, get on my bike. Like I'm going fast and I'm ready to go. And I'm not tired because I didn't swim that fast. So I'm going, I have a flat on my bike. And
Your first
thankfully I wasn't
race?
that far. I just, yeah. First race. And so I run it to the little thing. He fixes my tire. I get back on. I'm trying to make up time on the bike. And I forget that I'm supposed to drink water. And I just keep going and I'm like passing people. And I'm like, I get literally like the turn, they're flagging me. Like if it's your second time around the loop, you're going in here. And I go, "Oh man, I got a full water bottle. I better drink something before I run." And so I took like 2 squirts of the water bottle, right? Put it back down. And I'm like, well, now I got to run. I don't even grab, my friend that I did it with gave me a bunch of snacks. You're going to need this energy. You're going to need that. Didn't pick up a doggone thing. I just grabbed my stuff and I ran. Like I just dumped the bike and I'm running and I'm talking to everybody along the way. And I'm like every person there, I'm just having a blast, right? My calf started to cramp up. I could feel in the first like 400 meters. And so I had to run at a pace where it wasn't going to cramp or whatever and start that mess because of lack of water. But I ended up running pretty quick for the group. Only a few people passed me, and one of those was a lady who won first place in her age division. So
Nice.
and I told her, I go, "You better pass me. You better pass me. You're running fast." Cause we crossed paths this way. I go, "You're running super fast. You better pass me before I get to the finish line." And she did, she did like right before, but that whole experience was, mentally, I hit a zone on the run where it was kind of fun because it was almost relaxing in a weird sort of way. Like on the run part was super duper relaxing. And I loved it. And I got
Awesome.
done. I'm like, dude, I'm fired up. I can go do some more.
Awesome.
Like I love this. So I would definitely do another one. I for sure need some swim training though. If it's a longer one, I need swim training. For sure. I can swim the distance. I'll be
Did you do
I
an
mean,
Olympic your first one, or what was the distance?
no, I just did a sprint. I just did a
Sprint.
sprint.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah,
Nice.
it wasn't a big one. I knew my swimming capabilities and I was like, I don't want to bite off more than I can chew on that. The bike and the run is fine. Like that part, there's only so much the mental part can do for you in a swim.
Yeah. Hey, for what it's worth,
Swimming
I
is an
breaststroked my
equalizer.
first triathlon. I breaststroke the entire thing. I couldn't. I tried to freestyle. I couldn't. I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Literally breaststroking the whole way. My neck was all extended out, like all worn out from sticking my neck out. But I got through it though. It got better from there.
You bring up this. Yeah. You know what's really weird about it? If you think about it, like these things that attract me like that, the thing that attracted me to skating and the thing that I like, I mean, I've never loved an activity more than that.
Awesome.
Like I live, eat, sleep, breathe it, man. I mean, like I was in it. And the thing that got me into it was actually splitting a rail on my tailbone.
Huh.
The very first time I tried it. And I got like, these guys had this rail and they set it down. And I just rented rollerblades because I BMX'd all the time, right? And I was like, oh, let's try these rollerblades things out. They're kind of fun. They're cool to cruise on. The pair of TRS Lightnings. And these guys were carrying this rail. I just happened to see them. And there's like 5 of them, this little practice rail. And they set it up at this mall. And I go, let's go check that out, me and my buddy. And we go over there and I watch them and they wax this thing up. And that thing is like fast, man. And they're sliding down and I've never done it before. And I go, I want to try that. And they go, okay, cool. So I go up and they show me what to do. And then I go up and I hit it. My feet go straight up in the air. I land on my tailbone right in the middle of it. Wham! Super hard. I roll to the side and I go, dude, I want to do this. This is awesome. It's exactly what I did. And then I got up and tried it again and again. And I was hooked from there since. But that's the moment I can see it in my head perfectly clear of like when I go, oh, dude, this is awesome. But why is that moment that way? Some wires missing up in my head.
So crazy. It's so funny you say that because the very first time I went rollerblading was in Oklahoma before I moved to Georgia and met Tom and Frankie and Andy and all those guys. And Tom is the one who indoctrinated me into inline skates. But before I knew him, I lived in Oklahoma, and my very first time on a set of skates, we were hitting this little lip, and I didn't even own a pair of skates. My buddy just let me try his on, and first try I broke my arm. Completely flipped out. My feet went up underneath me, landed on the arm. My first broken bone ever. And for whatever reason, like you said, I was addicted ever since. Like as soon as that happened, that it was game on. I've been hurting myself ever since.
You leveled up.
Right?
Dude, speaking of like fortunate things, those names you just listed, it's like, man, if you're in that world, it's an honor to be able to be around those guys, man. You're like, you kind of in like the mecca of, all the stuff that was cool and rad. And we were talking like about Kevin Dowling episode, like you've known him forever. And it's like, man, all these people, Atlanta and Georgia itself just has a crazy cool scene, man, that you got.
Thanks to Tom,
man.
That's
pretty cool.
Yeah, those guys, for what it's worth, Tom and Andy and Frankie and I all graduated from high school together. And obviously Tom and Andy were the, kind of head and shoulders above the rest of us as far as skill level and whatnot. But the year we graduated from high school, 1994, Tom and Andy flew out to California, and me and Frankie hopped in his Nissan Stans or whatever it was, and literally drove out to Venice Beach and hooked up with the NIST guys and Mark Shays and all those guys, and spent the summer in Venice Beach, and got to stay with Angie at Daily Bread. And that summer that we graduated from high school and went and did the first NIST tournaments and what would ultimately become the X Games and all that, absolutely just changed my life. It absolutely just, it's such an incredible memory for me that I will always remember. And I'm so grateful that for whatever reason, the stars aligned and all that came together. And it just transformed me. I'm not an amazing rollerblader. I've never been super embedded in the, I mean, I worked for Skate Pile back in the day and got to run their retail store. And thanks to Tom for bringing me in for all that. And, I've always kind of been on the outside looking into the industry. Well, I mean, I was in the industry, but like, not like those guys were, but to be a part of that and to know all that history and to be able to reflect on that, I just feel incredibly blessed and incredibly grateful that I get to say that I was there for so many of those, like B Love Harden, like the Hoax 2 and Arlo and all those guys. Like I remember going out to Cali and staying with Arlo and Mike Opalik, and they had this giant half pipe in their backyard. And that's literally all their backyard was this giant half pipe that we were skating and stuff. And just to look and reflect back on all those memories, man, it's like, that's something I will cherish forever.
Dude, you know what? And we can end the podcast on this for sure, because it ties back in. It's your ability to just pull the trigger and do what you love, man. I mean, you had a choice back then to load up into that Nissan and drive out to California from where were you at the time? Oklahoma?
We were in Georgia. We were in Atlanta, Georgia. We graduated from Chattahoochee High School in 1994. And within a week we were hitting the road and heading out to Cali. 3,000 miles.
In 3,000 miles, man. You're literally like looking at 24 hours of driving back then, for sure.
It took us 4 days to get there and 3.5 to get back. But yeah. But I will always remember that trip, and I mean, if there's one piece of advice or anything that I could give to the listeners out there and to people that are doing, into this kind of stuff, it's like, just get out there and do it. Just do. Because if you do, like, all of the opportunities I've had in my life, it's when I just kind of stuck my neck out there and just kind of went for it and just kind of made that commitment and put myself out there, whether it be driving out to California or, starting a new business, or even with the podcast and the personal development space that I've been in this last year or two. It's just it's not gonna be pretty, but when you put yourself out there and you just go for it, it's incredibly rewarding, and I have no regrets from that. And I'm incredibly grateful for every one of those opportunities that came my way.
Right on, man. Well, let everybody know where they can find everything, the address, the website, your social media, all that good stuff.
So if you want to check out the 8 Keys to Great and the podcast and all that kind of stuff, it's 8, the number 8 keys, the number 2 great.com or .net. Either one will get you to the website. Social media, I've got the Extraordinary Podcast. I've got 8 Keys to Great. You can find me there. My personal handle is @mohotness. You can jump on that if you want to, but anybody all I ask is that you check out the podcast, and if you find it at all interesting or compelling, just subscribe and share it with your friends.
Yeah, that's the one thing we'll both tell you right now, and what I've learned: nothing affects a podcast or anything on social media or anything this hard work that you're doing. It's free of charge. It's free to the public to support them. Like it, rate it, subscribe, and share it, man. Share it on your social media. Put a post out about it. Comment on it. Nothing helps out more. So if you just take the few moments to do that, you have just made our day.
Very true. Yeah. I mean, most of us that aren't doing this professionally, if you're just a casual user of social media or any of those platforms, a lot of us don't take the time to think about commenting or likes. We really kind of look at that from a skewed perspective, but from a producer and from someone who's making content, you and I both, we live in that space of constantly putting new content out there. It is vitally important to all of us that you guys give us that feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. I always tell people I'm looking for the reviews on iTunes in particular, but you don't have to give me a 5-star review. You can give me a 1-star review. Just give me your feedback. I want to know if you think I suck, tell me so. I have no problem with negative feedback. I just want the feedback. And you know, for us, the only way that we get better is from that feedback. And the likes and the subscribes and all that kind of stuff are obviously incredibly important to helping us grow our businesses. So yeah, anytime that you can do that, by all means, shout out to the 9 to 5 Adventures podcast, because we need all the likes we can get. I just butchered that all over the place. You may have to edit that.
No
Trying
way.
to give a
No,
proper
it was
shout out,
perfect.
but it didn't work out very well.
It was perfect, dude. It was perfect. It was exactly it's right on par with me, bumbling around, but
Yeah.
that's who I am, you know? So
That's
awesome.
how we roll, right? Well, hey, for what it's worth, Aaron, I'm so grateful for what you're doing. And to like, I found your podcast originally when you interviewed my buddy Tom Heiser, and that was when you first kind of showed up on my radar. But I've been able to dig into some of your content from there, and to see someone else that's aligned with so many of the aspects of what's important to me. It's so incredibly rewarding, and so grateful to have another guy out there kind of trying to do what we do. It's really cool.
Well, this is one of my favorite conversations. It really, truly is. It's awesome. And it's kind of crazy that Tom brought us both together, because I found out about your podcast. Because when I asked him, he goes, I did one before. I said, have you ever been on a podcast? He's like, I did one before. It was my buddies. That's all he said. And then I looked it up. I had to go find it. And it was your podcast. And so that's where, that's how I got hooked on your podcast.
Yeah, Tom is a kind brother and a great soul, man. Love that dude till the day I die.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Well, he was rad to have. It was an honor to have him on, man. Being a K2 fatty dude, it was like, that's awesome. That's so cool.
Man. So, to watch the evolution of the skating industry, and to see the skating industry coming full circle again now, and to see its popularity picking back up again. It's awesome, man. It's such a great place to be, because there's some incredibly cool people in this space. And I love what inline skating has done for so many individuals. So many of the kids that I know that have, like you interviewed Kevin Dowling, and how he has crafted a career and a lifestyle around not skating, but how skating has provided an avenue for him, and so many other people, how skating has blessed their lives in so many different ways. It's incredible. And like how he was talking about how skaters make these natural actors and all that. I mean, it's incredibly true, man. It really is.
It is. It's awesome. Nate, man, thanks a lot for being on.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron, man. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to it. And part 2 is going to be on my show, where you're going to be coming on there, and we're going to break it down.
Yes, that's awesome. I love it, dude. I love it. Just send me a message. Let me know when and what. And
yeah, I've got it. I purposely didn't send the email until after we did the interview, because I didn't want you to get, sidetracked on anything, the stuff that I wanted to get you thinking on. So we've got a whole plethora of stuff we're going to really dive into deep when we show up on my show. So I'm really looking forward to it. Part 2.
Awesome, dude. Awesome. Thanks for being on, Nate.
Thanks, Aaron. Talk to you.